We have such an incredible conversation planned for you guys. This has been a very interesting year thus far. We know you guys are feeling it and paying attention. So we want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for continuing to be committed to this work. We need you. This is not the year to give up, so we got to keep pushing and push harder than we ever have. So I just want to say welcome again. Thank you for taking the time to be here. This is communicating with care, clarity, and compliance, protecting your organization and community. My name is Cheyenne Sapp. I'm the campaign director for the holiday. National Voter Registration Day is on September 16th. So many of you are already signed up to be partners, so thank you. And we have lots to get to, so let's keep it going. So first and foremost, yes, this webinar is being recorded. I know many of you will ask. It is absolutely being recorded because we know you want to keep this for your records. We will also send the deck and the link, so you'll have this after the presentation, but it is being recorded. We have 138 of you already here. Thank you for being here. I want to ask you to drop any questions that you have into the Q&A box, so you'll see that down below. The Q&A box is awesome because we can just raise up the questions at the end of the presentation and answer them. So don't drop your Q&A into the chat box, drop it into the Q&A box, please. We want to get started with a little bit about who we are and what we do. Obviously, many of you are already partners and have been for a long time. So even if you are returning or if you're brand new, welcome back and welcome. We are National Voter Registration Day is managed by Nonprofit Vote, which is the leading provider of nonpartisan resources. You can check out our biennial report to learn more about the work that we've done over the past couple of years and visit our website at nonprofitvote.org. And National Voter Registration Day, I don't know if you can believe it or not, but we are already 38 days out. Again, so many of you are already partners and signed on to receive your materials and run drives this year, so thank you. But we are now in our 13th year, if you can believe it. We like to say that we are both nonpartisan and bipartisan, and one of the few remaining safe spaces for those reasons. So congrats to all of you who have participated in years past. Welcome to those of you who are new. We're so happy to have you here. And this is a celebration that's coming up very quickly, and we're always excited to kick off the civic holidays. So NVRD is really just a celebration of democracy. It gives Americans the opportunity to register to vote for the first time or update their voter registration, which is an event that can bypass a lot of us. So again, we welcome you. For new returning partners, thank you. And to sign on to become an NVRD partner is just very 6 simple rules. Be nonpartisan, be inclusive, be informed about your state's voter registration laws, which we help you with, stay non-transactional at all times, be vote ready, and have fun. And again, many of you know this already because you've done it for many years. So we thank you for your consistency and dedication to this work. The deadline to sign up for this year is coming up. So if you guys are waiting until the last minute, please do not. It's August 31st. After August 31st, we cannot guarantee that you'll receive your free materials. That's your posters and stickers. So please be sure to sign up before the deadline. We already have over 1,000 local organizations signed up for to be community partners this year, which is fantastic. It's obviously a big year for state and local elections. So if you have your phone out, you can scan the QR code that's on the right of the screen, but we will also send out this presentation. You can also go to the website nationalvoterregistrationday.org. But again, the deadline is August 31st. If you've already signed up, thank you again, but if you haven't, please don't miss the deadline. So now let's set the stage for this discussion. And before we hear from our dynamic speakers, I just wanted to recap a lot of what we've already covered this year. So if you've missed any of these resources, don't worry, we'll receive the links to them along with the presentation. But we've got a lot of information to share with you, so buckle up and be sure to drop any questions that you have into the Q&A box instead of the chat. Sounds good? All right, so let's start with what we covered this year in the webinars. In March, we covered using the importance of 2025 as the building block for civic education and the foundation for your 4-year voter engagement plan. So we discussed how to help connect the dots when you're out speaking to voters, how to provide background information on how elections work with local, state, and federal, and then how you as a trusted organization can work civic engagement messaging into your ongoing outreach. Again, if you've missed this, no worries. You will have the link to this webinar with the presentation and the recording. Then in our May webinar, we did like a part 2 of that discussion where we talked about ways to effectively use data to build your voter engagement plan for 4 years. And that includes using data to reach your community in a more tailored way, how to craft messaging that resonates, and measure the success and impact of your work. In that webinar, we also shared a list of both free and paid tools, emphasis on free data tools that will help you garner some data insights to inform and improve your work. So once again, if you missed that, no worries, the link will be shared with you, and that's also on our website. Just last month, we actually launched a bunch of our updated toolkits that were created to make your work easier. So that is the communication strategy guide. We have the field organizer toolkit for running voter registration drives. And then we have the state-by-state guides. These are all super valuable tools. We have done the work for you so that you don't have to do it. You literally just have to read through this and pick through what is most relevant to your work. And this is all available on our website, but you'll also receive that within this link. And then we also have our website with just some general comms resources, including sample emails, how to talk to reporters, and much, much more. So be sure to check that out. And what we hope you'll take from this webinar. So now that you know about all the tools that are available to you, we want to level set the conversation about what we hope you'll get. So as we know, 2025 is not a business as usual year by any means, not for civic engagement, not for anything, right? So we wanted to focus the content of this webinar on some of the feedback that we've heard from partners about the political climate and how to make it possible to still engage voters. So what that includes is learning the art of key communication, both for design and being out in the field. Framing voter registration as community care and nonpartisan civic power, knowing how to use messaging proactively to de-escalate threats and confusion, which there's a lot of, understanding state-specific legal guidance for public messaging, so that's our state-by-state guide and the tools like that, and then hearing from trusted partners who've done this work successfully. So we'll start by preparing your voter engagement plan by addressing the landscape. So we want to kick this conversation off by acknowledging the state of things, the state of our nation and our country, and a lot of the policies that have changed since January. We want to remind ourselves that even in uncertain times, our communities still show up, because democracy persists just as we do. The fear and the confusion are real, but so is resilience. And despite new barriers and disinformation and political polarization, the civic holidays continue. So the best part about the civic holidays is that we are nonpartisan, inarguably nonpartisan, as is voter registration. And by staying nonpartisan, we create a welcoming space where all eligible citizens, regardless of party or identity or background, feel safe to participate. When you help someone to register to vote and talk to them about civic engagement, you're not just checking a box, you're helping them claim power within their communities and over decision that affects their schools and their housing and their safety and their jobs. And that work is deeply local, as we're seeing this year with 100,000 open races for state and local seats. We know that state and local elections will directly impact the daily lives of our community members. So this is a way that you show momentum, you can deepen relationships, and use 2025 as an opportunity to bring new voters into the conversation right where they live in their own communities. So we want to start off before we hand off to the speakers by giving you just a few important things to keep in mind to help shape this conversation. So it's a lot to listen to, it's a lot to take in, it's just a lot of a year, right? But these are the things that we want to help frame the discussion. So number one, when you're out talking to voters and doing voter engagement, create a trusting environment. You are a trusted voice in the community, and right now more than ever, we need that trust. Thank you for the hearts. Appreciate you guys. Number two, message with clarity and care. This is really important this year because, again, there's a lot of disinformation. So it's up to you as the trusted voice to come in and bring that clarity to your community. Demonstrate language and cultural competence. This is more important now than ever because your community needs to see that you get it and you get them and you understand what they are facing specifically this year. Know your local voting legislation. So again, that's being educated about what is happening in terms of voting legislation in your state, what has changed, what has maybe updated, just making sure you stay on top of that so that you can pass along the right and correct information. Be prepared to handle misinformation and sensitive questions. We encountered a lot of this last year for those of you that were out in the field. It will come up again this year and then again as we lead up to the midterm. So as much as possible, be prepared for that. Leverage media safely. So we'll talk to you a little bit about what are the concerns that people have with voter registration this year and how you can appropriately use media based on your community's needs. Partner with trusted local organizations. What I should say here is other, because you are one of the trusted local voices, right? So make sure that you can kind of deepen that understanding of how you are a trusted voice in your community by partnering up and showing that there's a cohort of you. Provide language that is accessible, including know your rights materials. So this is just something helpful to have on hand in case those questions come up. Train your volunteers on safety and sensitivity. This is super important because training, especially around voting legislation and the laws, is going to be really important for this year and then leading into the midterms. And then lastly, emphasize the citizenship requirement clearly and compassionately. So you want to make sure that you're starting off your conversation with that so that there is no confusion. And what it all boils down to is this: know your community. As a trusted local organization, have a deep understanding of your community and what they're facing. Know your stuff. So that means when voting rules can change from year to year, make sure that you are staying on top of it for whatever your state is. And then use your tools. You have the tools that are available to you through the state guides, the toolkits, the field outreach, and what you'll hear today from our speakers coming up. So you have all the tools that you need to power through this, but make sure that you have these three things or keep these three things as like the framework for you. So now let's get into the discussion around communication. So first we'll hear from two incredible speakers about how to prepare for conversations out in the field this year specific to 2025. And then our third speaker will tell you about how to craft the tools that will prepare you for this year's work. So let's hear from our speakers. I'd like to introduce our first two who work on both the national and state levels. Sang is the National Field Director of one of our long-standing partners and steering committee member, APIA Vote. And Noelle is the Civic Engagement Manager of the Asian Community Development Council, also known as ACDC. She works across the state in Nevada and does incredible work out there. So Sang and Noelle, thank you both for being here. And I'll pass it to Sang to kick us off.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, NVRD, for having API Vote here. We're always appreciative of you including us in the work that you're all doing. My name is Singh. I'm the National Field Director for API Vote. We are a national nonprofit organization. I'm located in Minnesota, so I work directly here in Minnesota, but our offices are in DC. I come from the Hmong American community, so I know firsthand the challenges of trying to register new immigrants. As I've done this in Minnesota here for the last couple of years. As a reminder, API Vote is we are the nation's leading nonpartisan nonprofit dedicated to engaging and part of the API communities to strengthen their voices and create impact. We work with over 60 different local AAPI partners in 29 different states. This also includes our work with students and other nonprofits and emerging groups within the states. We focus on supporting local partners, and you'll get to hear from one of our local partners, ACDC out in Nevada today, who's joining me on this call by providing resources and training for civic engagement. As part of my field work, we also do subgranting, and we really emphasize the importance of direct voter contact, especially coming out of the pandemic, as it's even more important now to meet people directly on the ground and within their community. Um, and then in 2024, as is related to this conversation, API Vote translated and sent out 3.8 million mailers to API households in our partner states. And as many of you know, like translating materials is very difficult to do, especially within our API community, as we have a vast amount of languages and ethnicities that are being represented. And at API Vote, we also have a dedicated youth team, policy comms, and development team to support our partner organizations through their work. When I first started doing this work in organizing, it was before the first term for Trump and after the first after his and before and after. So I started back in 2016 organizing, and this has been, I'd say, on the ground. So like the most amount of fear and misinformation that has been prevalent. I see it directly on the ground, and we also hear from our partners about these challenges. And of course, the ACDC will speak a little bit more to this a little later when they're sharing kind of their experiences. But it's more important than ever now to really build that understanding and trust within our direct communities and have those messengers. We are at this critical time, especially through our VR effort, that we also don't want to scare or deter people, especially immigrants from registering to vote, right? Because it is very fearful. I mean, we go out and we collect all this data. And now, what are we also doing to protect that data at the same time? And are we also putting people at risk? Here in Minnesota, I know that DOJ has also been pressuring our Secretary of State to share voter registration lists with the Department of Justice. So this also adds in a level of another layer of challenge to actually working and trying to register new naturalized citizens. And you said, I think that for so long, the work that we've all been doing, especially around voters, has been collecting metrics and data and how important that the capturing of it is for us. But many times we're asking voters to do a lot and to provide a lot for us. But we're in this very sensitive and historical moment that we have to really question what sort of tactics are new tactics are we going to deploy to really be able to make sure that we're engaging voters and being also respectful of the current political climate. I can't emphasize how important it is to build community trust. And this is what API Vote focuses strictly on. Although we're a national organization, we work directly with our partners to do that trust building and for them to be able to do that. I've just got a quick story that I want to share with related to this. I had a family member a while ago come to me and brought me an official looking piece of letter from USCIS. What we figured out that this letter was a scam. It was asking for a payment, and they took the letterhead directly from somewhere, and they had created messaging directly around that. And found out that it was also from his own cousin who sent his letter that looked official to him to also be able to try to scam him for money. This is very important because right now, with the way that the way that everything is functioning, I think there's are bad actors who are taking advantage of this political climate to really disintegrate this idea of trust that we have even within our own family members and family structures and friends, right? So it's really continuing to build these trusts over time. Thankfully, we were able to figure out this is a scam and nothing transpired out of it. But we know that this is happening at a very grassroots and very small level, a very local level of doing things. And that's why we need to continue to work on these things over time and start from building trust within our peers and our family. Because if we can't do that, how are we expecting others to actually even have trust within our institutions? Um, so like that's why I said API Votes is really here as a national organization to focus on local partners, and then hopefully the local partners are the trusted messengers directly to these communities, and then really by supporting our partners and then amplifying any sort of success stories that's coming directly from the grounds. And one of the other important things that we want to emphasize on our side too is year-long voter activation and civic engagement, and not just when it's time to go out to vote is when you're connecting directly with voters.
Saying really appreciate that for kicking us off, and we will definitely be able to answer any questions that you guys have, because I know this is a very robust topic. So please drop your questions into the Q&A. We are here to answer them for you. And now I'll pass it to Noel from ACDC, who will take the next part of that discussion.
Beautiful. Thank you, Cheyenne. Just wanted to echo Sang's thoughts of, thank you to NVRD for having us and allowing us to continue doing this work. Just as a quick introduction, my name is Noel, and I am part of ACDC. Yes, the acronym is just like the rock band. We're not a rock band, but I still think we're pretty cool. So we are a 501c3 based in Nevada. I'm based in beautiful Sin City, Las Vegas. And so our mission is to improve the general well-being and education of the Asian Pacific Islander community here in Nevada. And in completing our mission, we are able to promote foster champions and advocates for the Asian American and Pacific Islander, or AAPI community in Nevada. So just a quick backstory. Our founder, actually, our president and founder, she started this organization because she was directly affected by the lack of resources for API folks. And so she wanted to ensure that nobody ever felt the same way that her and her family did. So she wanted to ensure that AAPI folks were able to elevate their voices. And so the main mission she wanted to do was ensure that a lot of people were registered to vote. But we quickly realized that not a lot of the reasons a lot of our community members are not registering to vote is because they're not citizens. So we were able to supplement this voter registration with citizenship assistance. So, and on top of the voter registration, we provide other direct services, including citizenship assistance, helping enroll in other public benefits such as SNAP, and then health insurance navigation to ensure that our communities have basic resources to be able to live. And so our motto is to educate, connect, and empower. And we want to ensure that our communities, especially during this tough climate, still are able to participate in civic engagement and to ensure they not lose hope. So just as a quick stat, we've registered over 56,000 plus people to vote since 2018 and 3,700 in 2024 alone. So how do we talk to our community? As Sang said earlier, one of the biggest things that we have to do is establish trust in the community, and establishing trust means being willing to be able to hear them out. So right now, especially in this climate, a lot of immigrant communities are afraid of doing anything, government related, filling out a VR form, or even just interacting with the government in any sort of way can be kind of scary for them. But we have to obviously we're all doing this work. We know that registering to vote is fine, but in this climate, you really have to be understanding that people are scared. So, don't dismiss them. Say a lot of people share this concern. You're not alone. And I think the biggest thing here is, again, emphasizing community. So establishing trust is really important. So you have to go into these communities and speak with these people. And something that we do at ACDC is we not only go into the communities, we go to the events, we go to all of their celebrations to ensure that we make a presence in their space, but we also connect with the community leaders, right? So we go to religious temples, we go to churches, anywhere where the community congregates the most, and we reach out to the leaders and we say, hey, we are here to support you in your community. And we open up conversations with them that, what are your concerns? How can we support you? How can we help you? And we're able to leverage some of our direct services and bring them into these spaces so that when you bring something in addition to, I think, talking about civic engagement, it is very useful. So even if you may not provide direct services, that's where the community collaboration comes in, right? You may work with another organization or another group that can help bring something else into these spaces, and that may be able to help you establish a stronger sense of trust. And then just another thing to recognize is that patience is really important. You know, a lot of the times when you're going to these communities, if you're not already in these communities, it takes a while to build that trust. So you have to understand that right away. You know, they're not all going to be so willing to register to vote or even hear you out. But, you know, I think the important thing here is just um, is being constant and being present. Um, and the more present you are, and the more you're able to talk with them about different things, the more likely they're willing to help you out or hear you out. Okay, beautiful. And so once you're able to get into these communities and you're having these conversations about uh, civic engagement, voter education, you know, something that's really important is to guide the conversation by communicating what's at stake. So the state and local elections, right? It's really important for the community to address their concerns. So address it with them, you know, ask them what are some of their most, what are the issues that they are most concerned about. For our communities, right, something that we've heard a lot is they care about healthcare, education, immigration, small business reform. And these are the things that you can open conversations with them about so that they can feel more inclined to take action and be part of the democracy that we're all building. Um, and that's why the lived experiences are so important, right? You don't want to be aggressive with them, you don't want to push them, but just opening up these conversations and saying, you know, this could affect you and your family, you know, and people are very responsive to things that affect them directly. So it is more about the balance is the power and presence, right? So just as like um a reference, right? Going back to the story of our president, right? Something that motivated her was that her one of her family members was directly affected by the lack of healthcare access. So as a result, you know, she made sure that she was able to raise her voice to ensure that people like that don't feel the same, don't feel the same way they did. So um just using those personal stories too as a way to leverage power, I think is also really important. And just again, hearing people out, people love to talk, hear them out. And when they're able to talk to you, they're more able to trust you and they're more willing to build upon the community that you're trying to build. And so with that being said, right, so you built the trust with the community, you're having the conversations, right? So before you even go out there, I think it's also really important to prepare yourself to go into these communities, right? Specifically immigrant communities. We mainly focus on AAPI, but of course we're not limited to just AAPI folks. But it's really important that you have to be in there, go in there prepared. So something that we do and we really try to work on is that the communities that you go into, it's really important to have representation. So if you're going into, let's say, like, if you're for us, right, if we're going to a Vietnamese temple, we're going to make sure that we send out our Vietnamese staff and volunteers who share the culture, who share the language, because it's a lot easier to talk to people who share the same values as you. They're more willing to be able to listen to you. So yeah, people who speak the same language, or if not speak the same language, share at least some of the same cultures. They're a lot more willing to be more receptive. If you're not able to get people who represent the people you're going to, bring in language materials, right? So something that we did is we made voter guides in language in like 6 or 7 different languages. And we brought them out to the communities we went into. It was just small one pagers. We had them in 6 or 7 languages and we brought it out to the community and it really helped and people really took advantage of it. On top of that, it's really important to ensure that your volunteers are also trained to handle such sensitive conversations, right? A lot of the times people will say some things that they might not be prepared for. So just making sure that they are equipped with the skills and, you know, having mock conversations with them as well can be really helpful because it can be kind of scary, especially for people who have never done it before. But at the end of the day, I think it's just really important to ensure that we are able to build upon communities that we already have. Because I think that the more that we build the communities, that we build trust within each other, I think it's more likely to lead to building change slowly but surely. And with that being said, I think I am done, and I think it will be passed to pass it back to Cheyenne. Well, thank you.
Noelle, thank you. Both you and Sang just imparted so much knowledge and insight. You guys just dropping some gems. So, thank you for that. We are definitely anticipating your Q&A. So I saw a few already come through. Thank you guys, and I know you will have some more questions. And now we're going to get into our next segment, which is now how to craft those communications tools. We talked about field. We talked about what is at stake for this year. And now let's design some tools that will actually boost your impact. So we're going to hear from Andrea Miranda Salas, who is the research practice lead at Center for Civic Design. I love the work that they do and the tools that they have created. So ask them to be part of this conversation because it's super valuable. So I will pass it to Andrea, and please continue to drop your questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me. So I'm just going to share some recommendations that came straight out from our research project that we conducted. And this is about culturally relevant visual design that can foster this voter trust and engagement that we're talking about. Okay, so just briefly, a nonpartisan nonprofit group, and we work with elections and offices across the country and advocates like yourselves, and we use design best practices to remove barriers in voter journey, and of course to invite participation and democracy. And in 2024 alone, we worked in 18 states, something we're quite proud of. And at CCD, we design for every part of the election experience. So what you see here is ballot design, voter information, mail ballot envelopes, and we also include forms and notices. So basically, our goal is to make it easy for everybody to vote. So everything we create here is based on this through the research that we do. And we really take great pride in having this out in the open. So all of our tools and resources are on our website. Please use them. We want people and folks like you, like yourselves, that are doing the work to use all of this. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to be sharing some of these insights from this research. It really came from a 2023-2024 research project that I did in Ohio. There are also some recommendations that I included on some early insights from a subsequent project that we did in Houston that we worked with new citizen voters. Yeah, and so in this research, we really wanted to support community-based organizations like yourselves and the efforts in engaging communities with historically lower voter turnout. So that really led us to wonder, like, how might we make election design visually engaging, colorful, even attractive, and of course, culturally relevant. And what does it really mean to be culturally responsive when you're communicating with voters? So we partnered with the Ohio Voting Rights Coalition. And that's a group of community-based organizations working in Ohio. They're a great group. And at the time, there were several voting law changes. So one of them was stricter ID laws, among others. And this is what we heard from one of the community members here, that it's getting harder and harder to communicate to people that voting is easy. And we thought that was just such a strong statement. And this is really precisely what we wanted this study to hit upon and to address, and to see how visual design could address this. So we partnered with 5 wonderful organizations in Ohio. We reached out to about 62 participants and across 3 cities. This is just an overview of who we spoke to here, but basically 95% of the participants we spoke were from communities of color. We reached Black young voters. We reached, we did some testing and created, we did some tests. We created some materials and did some testing with multilingual communities, one of them being the Nepali Bhutanese new citizens, and also the Puerto Rican community, who are bilingual, I should say. And just quickly, this is a snapshot of what we tested. So we really were testing different visual styles, such as color, multilingual layouts, and then also levels of information, ranging from formats like postcards, social media posts, and something a little bit more in length such as civic guides. All right, let's get to the recommendations here. I am only speaking about 4 of them. Please engage in the report. We'll share the link in a minute, but please engage in the report. It has way more than 4. It is going to touch on 3 themes. There's going to be trust and engagement, culturally responsive imagery, and of course, some color use as well. All right, so the first insight here. So in Ohio's 2023, the general election, there was really 2 controversial issues on the ballot. So one of them was the reproductive decisions, and issue 2 was about legalizing recreational marijuana. So when we went ahead and tested these flyers, and we had the ballot issues, predominantly, as you can see on the top, participants said to us that they felt that they was trying to sway them towards voting in favor of these issues, right? So the quote here is from a participant that really disliked this flyer, and because she said she didn't support legalizing marijuana, and to her, this flyer really intended to influence her vote as she saw it. So we learned that voters want basic voting information to be unbiased, right? This helps to ensure trustworthiness. And so combining advocacy and basic voting information, it really it can risk alienation for undecided individuals and also folks that are just opposed to the actual ballot issues that are on that flyer because of their range of political views. And so the recommendation here is pretty straightforward. The first thing that readers look for is a general invite to vote. So we recommend using headers that are just getting to the point here, that they include election day and the type of election, such as the ones here that we tested. There's a few considerations, of course, to make. So, if you're making voter education materials versus advocacy materials, when you're creating voter education, like I said, we would recommend avoiding using those ballot issues on the header. But we understand that you obviously want to educate your voters, and voters are wanting to know what the issues are on the ballot. So what we're recommending is that you put that information further down in the content in smaller text. I know this seems somewhat minor, but as we saw with the testing, it's not. So you put that in a smaller text in the contact, and then you also link it with nonpartisan resources that trusted nonpartisan resources that that give the detailed information so that person can then do their research. Also want to point out here that we recommend to steer clear of using hyper-specific cultural language in the header. We sort of tested this with the Puerto Rican community. We were trying to engage them more. And so in one of our headers, we put Cleveland Boricuas. Now, people did identify as Boricuas, but we heard from people from the community that they felt like they were singled out from the larger Latino voting community, and they were wondering why, and they just kind of perceived that a little bit as divisive. So we are recommending to steer clear of that. And the next one. So second insight here. So the red, black, and green colors on this flyer, it really resonated with a lot of the Black voters who, associated this with African liberation movement and Black Lives Matter movement. But we did hear from some folks that they were a bit suspicious about who was behind this information, right? And so this participant here, they mentioned that it just seemed disingenuous, and it felt like a little bit of a co-opting colors to them, which then made them a little bit skeptical. Similar response with the Puerto Rican community. They appreciated these images of the Puerto Rican flag, something they take a lot of great pride in, but they really immediately questioned the source of the information. So what we're learning is that culturally significant colors and imagery is important. It does have an impact, but it really depends on who is sharing this information. So for example, if it's coming from a really familiar organization that really primarily works with Black and Latino communities in this case, then that imagery actually fosters a sense of community. But we saw that if the source is a little bit of a wider government office, then voters are a little more skeptical, and they're just kind of distrustful of the design choices down to the imagery and the color. Okay, so that's a lot. What our recommendations are here is to really assess the relationship with your audience, right? Understand who you are, right? Are you representative of your audience? Assess those identities in your organization. Is your outreach team, is that representative of the audience? And if not, like I said, sort of steer clear from hyper-specific imagery or messaging, right? That can single people out. Um, I say this because it's really crucial in our research and our partner organizations. They were predominantly white-led organizations, volunteer groups, I should say, and they showed that they really feel inadequate and to engage with BIPOC communities, right? So knowing who you are and the identities of your organization is pretty important. And then avoid using imagery and colors that you don't have a cultural understanding of. Pretty straightforward, if you don't know what that means, don't use it. And then last but definitely not least, we're big advocates of this. Show it to someone in your audience, right? It's like the quickest and best way to learn how your organization and your imagery is coming across. So go ahead and show it to someone that you are targeting, the target audience, I should say. All right, and now we're getting to the third insight here. So we learned that most participants across community groups that we tested with, they really prefer images of like diverse, racially and ethnically diverse groups of people. They love seeing themselves represented, and they love seeing imagery of people when it comes to voting, but they just feel like showing a diverse group just helps them. It's more accurate, and it's an accurate representation of their community, they feel, and there also feels like it gets a sense of unity and gets people united on certain issues. There were some differences, though, among community groups. So here, we heard from some Black voters, and they felt targeted when images of flyers definitely just featuring only images of Black people. And this is, again, going back to the ballot headlines. It's especially true if the issues on the ballots are controversial as well. So some folks, they said, I'm a little skeptical of this imagery, and they even said they preferred imageless flyers. Although they like the colors, they like the imagery, they preferred imageless because they felt like it was a little more less biased and really just more straightforward. So here, the recommendation is really use imagery of diverse groups of people so people feel represented and not singled out. Be thoughtful and intentional in imagery. It's really important to select those images that connote the things that you want to express. Show authentic aspects of diversity. Don't really try to do a inauthentic sort of box checking of what diversity looks like. Do it in an authentic way, and then consider the composition. Even we heard a lot from people that images of people smiling and being very facing that camera. It's a sense of welcoming and excitement and happiness that they feel represents what voting should be, and so they like that. And we recommend picking imagery that shows that sense of welcoming. Okay, so this is a good one here. So bright and colorful get out the vote materials, they were really particularly effective for young voters. We really learned that overly political imagery and also traditional red, white, and blue did not work with the folks that we spoke to. They said that it could be intimidating. They found it intimidating, especially when we heard from young college students or first-time young voters that are really new to politics, and that just as this states, I'm not into the politics, right? And so that can be really intimidating. But again, we did hear a difference in color preferences between young first-time voters and then new citizen voters. So in Ohio, when we spoke to older voters, they associated this traditional red, white, and blue in the imagery. They found they associated with voting, and they really found that some of the bright colors just represented just the lack of seriousness of voting. It was a little off-putting. And then further, and I think I mentioned this, that there was another project in Houston when we spoke with naturalized citizens, and this is from older generations. Many of them, just because they're influenced by their country's origin, they really expect this straightforward imagery, serious imagery, and then those vibrant colors just were really childish and a bit too loud for them. Yeah, so our learning here is just to consider, that color usage, it can definitely invite folks. We learned that, but just to consider the folks that you're talking to, right? And so for young voters, using that non-traditional colors that well, I would say non-traditional colors and also good, information design, right? Not just color everywhere, but information design. It really helps capture young people's attention. They're overwhelmed by a lot of information. We all are, really. But it helps to break through a bit, and it also just makes those materials less intimidating, right? But then on the flip side here, new citizen voters, that red, white, and blue, it signals to them, it guides them, it leads them in quickly to identify that content, right, of voting or civic engagement. And that's really crucial for newly naturalized citizens. They are navigating this new voting process. So you want to make it, obvious there for folks, and that really helps guide them. Okay. So we are going to give you the links for this. This is the full report. Like I said, there is more goodies. I just gave you just a few nuggets. So please go ahead and read that fully. I'm going to really quickly walk you through a toolkit, and I mean very, very quickly because I'm looking at the time. So please, we'll give you a link to this. We developed a toolkit based on this research. And the goal of this toolkit is really to support organizations like yourselves and to make this digestible voter education materials, no matter how big or small your organization is. And it just includes practical guides, customizable templates, and resources. If you could just skip ahead. One of the big things that I want to just shout out here, that it is built on this bite snack meal. Yes, right there. And it is really a framework that we use a lot. And it helps us think through what creating and planning and presenting information for voters and what that is and how it can be digestible. And so here, the bite is really the small information. The snack is more about the context around that small information to inform voters. And most of the time, that's really kind of all they need. And then the meal is something a little more substantial, right? It has, like a website or a written voter guide. And for the sake of time, I think I'm going to stop there. If you just keep going all the way down in slides, I hope you then check out our toolkit. It really has some really amazing goodies. We hope that this is where you land. It will have a design component as well. And then, yes, my colleague has put that in the chat. I'm so sorry I had to go so quickly, but thank you so much.
Andrea, thank you so much. I told you guys we had so much information to share with you, and isn't it just wonderful to hear both what you should say or not say out in the field, but then also what are the research-backed materials that you could be designing to make sure that your work is actually effective and impactful. So we wanted to be able to provide both sides of that coin because I think it's just going to be really helpful this year and then, of course, going into next. So Andrea, thank you. Sang, thank you. And Noel, thank you. We are going to answer a few of the Q&A questions that came through. Thank you to those of you who submitted before we wrap up. And some of these questions are fantastic. I mean, there's been some really big resources shared, so it's a lot to digest. Again, this recording will be shared, so you guys will have access to all of these resources. So I'm going to raise up just a couple of the questions so that we can quickly answer them. And if our presenters don't mind chiming in for any of the answers that are relevant to y'all, I would appreciate it. But here's one as an example. So since we just heard from Andrea, does the Center for Civic Design have any unlicensed or royalty-free images based on this research that we can use?
Excuse me. Yeah, so in the toolkit, there are templates there for you. They're Canva, sorry, I had to skip through it. It's Canva templates. So please check that all out. And that has everything formatted for you. It's multilingual as well. So we've actually translated some of that basic information. So please go ahead and use that. We also have, and excuse me if it takes me a minute, we'll get the link for you, but we have civic icons that you can definitely use and that we share widely. And I will provide those in the link as well. Yeah, thank you, Liron.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think what Andrea just said was that partners have already thought about this work and have made it plug and play for you guys. So the Canva templates, it couldn't be any easier, right? And the same with our toolkits and the same with what our field partners also offer. So just use what is available. Do not reinvent the wheel. We want to make sure that we put you in a good position to be successful. So So thank you. Um, Here's another question that we have. What are some easy ways to teach these tips to volunteers out in the field for NVRD? So I'm actually going to throw that to Sang or Noel, since you guys work in the field a lot. Maybe not just specific to NVRD, but for anyone that's doing a voter registration drive, what is the best way to make sure that the volunteers are ready?
Yeah, I think in particular, really refining scripts are going to be important, as any sort of field work that you have planned. And consistently, I always say the best way is to have consistent try to do your best to also do volunteer training and recruitment and retention too. I mean, those are very important. I mean, if you are always constantly training new volunteers at the same time, it is good getting new volunteers in there, but it's really making sure that you have volunteers who are seasoned, who are also coming into work as trainers directly for other volunteers. So there's layers that you can do about doing that, because it's as you were saying before, you don't need to reinvent the wheel in terms of like how you can. These are resources that are available. Resources meaning human power to allow for some of that to actually happen. And I would just try to uh, visit what sort of training program that you have directly for any sort of volunteers and what that script looks like, and simplify things as much as possible, and definitely recruit people who have language potential for volunteers.
And Noel, a question for you. Do you have any tips on how to engage voters on social media? Is there anything that ACDC has done or continue to do that has been particularly effective?
So for social media, I think the biggest thing that we do is just again, going back to what everyone said, don't reinvent the wheel. We just share a lot of the resources that our partners may have already done, or just other organizations that we trust, just sharing the information. And a lot of people, especially now in the age of social media, infographics are so important. And sometimes people just look at like the pretty graphics and it's like, oh, that's kind of cool, and they remember it. So I think just having engaging graphics um, is really important, whether you create your own or you just pull some, or not pull some, but you share some from some other organizations.
Absolutely. Do not reinvent the wheel is the theme here that we hear. And I'll answer the last question. How do we recommend to navigate conversations with individuals who believe their vote is one of many and will not change anything? That is a great question. And what we say is that when it comes to local elections, every single vote matters. We see in elections all the time that the vote or the candidate who wins comes down to sometimes gaps of 100 votes, sometimes it's gaps of 3 votes. So when it comes to local, that's where it matters the most. And also the second piece of that is accountability. So it's not only that your vote will change something, but holding that candidate and politician accountable is where you'll see the change. Awesome. Well, we didn't have a lot of time for Q&A, so I invite you to send any questions over to us at info@National Voter Registration Day. Again, you'll have the access to this deck. And if you have not yet signed up to be a community partner, please do so by August 31st so that we can guarantee you'll receive your posters and stickers, which are completely free. You have access as well to our toolkits and fact sheets, which will be coming up. And then on August 19th, we have a state guides webinar, which we are super excited about. I hope all of you are there. A lot of voting legislation has changed over the past year. So we want to make sure that you are well informed and well educated about what's going on. If you live in New Hampshire or Nevada or wherever you are, Minnesota, in this country, make sure that you know as a third party how to register voters. And then National Voter Registration Day on September 16th, of course. I just want to thank our panelists for being here. This has been such valuable information. I know you guys have taken a lot from it. I've taken a lot from it. Having the experts here to tell you about what they've done and then also share that research is just super important for this year and for next year. I would encourage everyone to stay in the game. The fight is only beginning this year. We are up against a lot, and we are all in this together. So the resources are there for you. The tools are there for you. If you have any questions, the email is on the screen and you will receive access to all of these links. Thank you guys so much for being here and keep it going. Best of luck. Bye.